So I have a kind of hot take here, where I think Heretics is going to be bottom 2.
Ooh, that is spicy. Okay.
This split, I think that they're not going to make it.
Right, this is going to be the first Best Damn League show of 2023. And what we decided to do, as you might notice, is one, we are live. This is not actually a pre-recorded episode being shown live like old something and so. This actually is live for real. Like, I'm not going to hold up like today's paper or whatever, or just some fucking proof. Like, you'll just have to accept that's real. But the point is, we're going to try, at least initially, we're going to try playing it by ear. And I thought, just because Dom's schedule doing the LPL is pretty brutal, like the hours he has to do, I thought what we'll try and do is, instead of usually we would record the actual like pre-recorded episodes in about like 4 hours from now or 5 hours from now, instead of him just basically having to sometimes stay up for 7 hours or take a weird nap for 3.5 hours or whatever. I don't know what you do, mate, but however you make it work, I thought
just don't sleep. That was the move.
I thought as long as it doesn't kill me, we'll just try doing it right after LPL basically. So we'll do it this way. So this is going to be the first one. Now, obviously, the key thing is, if you know the way we do this show, the whole premise of the show is actually not to have guests. It is to have me and Dom essentially just week by week go through LEC. You see how thoughts evolve. But the way we use the guests is we do a guest, I would say, roughly every 3 episodes or something. I use them more when it's like you're in a period of the season where not that much has changed week to week, or maybe the teams are sort of established and you want to like throw in some more spice of a different take or an angle. So we're going to start out again with just me and Dom. And the good thing is, not only in this episode are we going to go through all the teams, like even if we don't like a team, we'll give some thoughts on the, well, you can probably guess, but spoiler, it's the same shit teams at the bottom of the league as it was in the past one. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's okay. It's all good. We'll get there. But here's the key thing. Also, we can actually start before we get into any rosters and any info. We have to obviously start with the format of the league, right? Because that's the biggest change, Dom. Like, essentially, if people don't know, it's sort of like, in a fucked up sense, the old OGN schedule where you now have sort of 3 splits, as it were. Although I will say they're not splits. Like, bizarrely, they've done this weird marketing decision where even if you win one, like the first one, you haven't won like a split or whatever. And it's only really, as far as I know, like the summer one that's like the real champion of the LEC. I don't know why they've done that part. That part's weird. But just essentially this part where if people don't know, now there's going to be 3 tournaments, let's just say that, within LEC. And instead of it just being a league where you play like the Premier League in soccer / football, instead now it starts as a round robin, but then what you do is you immediately kick, I think, 2 of the teams out, then you go to like a GSL group stage, and then the teams from that go to an actual like playoffs. And basically the quick way to say it is, instead of being 2 leagues with like a playoffs attached, it's essentially now like 3 tournaments. But like I say, it's not the same format, but it's somewhat akin to what OGN used to be back in the day in Korea, right? What were your initial thoughts when you heard this, Dom? Because even though like people have hinted at ideas like remove a split or make more international terms, I actually haven't heard from Riot at least any hint they might do something like this for like a region. I thought it was quite an interesting move.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had mixed feelings because I mean, on the my initial take was, oh wow, this is really good for LEC. Like, you're gonna get best of 3s now. It's better practice. Most of the leagues that win every single fucking split or every single tournament, they've got best of 3s for the entire year. So I thought that'd be really good for these teams to just experience that. And now you're gonna have best of 3s internationally as well. So they're gonna get prepped for that. But then from a selfish standpoint, I'm like, damn, what happens if BDS just goes out every single split in the first fucking 3 weeks? Where's my fucking content? Like, I wanted to flame Adam for the whole year. I was promised that he was actually going to be a part of the league. So I was like, I don't know. I felt a little bit cheated there because I might only get 9 weeks of flaming Adam, and my channel thrives off that shit. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn between the two.
The joke is they actually have moved the format of LEC to the format of how I used to do Best Damn League Show, because you already mentioned BDS and the bad teams for the first couple of weeks. Then they go weeks without being mentioned or seen, and they seem to not exist, and then they just come back in again when they do something. So in some ways, it's actually mirroring the format. That's how we used to do this show, if people know. So no, like the other thing, obviously, like the biggest thing I'm hyped for here, Dom, is, as you say, one, I should have mentioned that detail. Obviously now we have best of 3 in a bunch of the games from the GSL onwards and the playoff bracket. Obviously, the key thing I'm super hyped for here is, I've always thought one of the biggest flaws with the way the league circuit works, particularly in the West, because if people don't know, since, as you say, the Asian regions, the top regions play a best of 3 anyway, and if people don't know, I actually always thought this is what made the LPL mad OP is. In China, they used to also have a whole land circuit on the side. They used to not only have the off-season tournaments like Demacia, they used to actually have tournaments like 2014, 2015, if you go back to then. They used to have them like parallel to the LPL, like real cups and lands and stuff with all the same teams. I always used to think the thing that's so silly in League of Legends is it's a game that massively relies on chemistry between the players that you can't know before you put them in the server. And the chemistry in a best of 1 regular season game, it can clearly be so different to like a pressure playoff game. But unlike like my native game of CSGO, in CSGO, because everything's a tournament and everything's a LAN and like within a 4-month span in CSGO, you're going to play like 3 LANs maybe. Like if you're not actually going to make it as a team and you're not going to be good, dude, you'll figure out so much quicker in a game like CSGO with a tournament format. Like I've always thought in League, dude, those splits being like 9 weeks of just BO1s, like they could trick you. Like you get all the way through and you think you've got the good team, you think your team's going to make it the place, you think you're going to hold, and then you just lose your first game. And in your first playoff game, you realize like, shit, what the hell? I could have done this like 2 weeks in maybe if I had a fucking real match, like not just a fucking silly cheese BO1 or something.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's also interesting about it is in previous splits, you've had the bad teams start out actually pretty good. And there's chances that we might end up missing out on some like really big teams. Like there's a chance that we don't see like a G2 or a Fnatic or like, you know, one of the top teams in one of the splits, because you only are actually getting 9 games before that GSL best of 3 group stage actually starts. So I think that's another interesting point of it, because a lot of these teams can overperform. I mean, if you looked at Astralis, for example, over the last like 3 or 4 weeks, last year they had like 3 wins already, and like 3 wins is probably enough to put you in the top 8. Like going 3 and 6, you can normally make top 8. So if any of these teams start mega bad, which we've seen before, we saw Fnatic, and what was that year? The
season
year
9
came in, yeah, season 9, 2019. We saw them lose a bunch of games at the start, and you're not going to be able to recover anymore. So
that's true.
There's definitely going to be some interesting aspects. I don't think it'll be as cut and dry as like Astralis and BDS are just getting kicked out every fucking split. Like I think we're going to see a lot of like interesting things there, but who knows?
That's true, actually. No one ever does mention that side, Dom, because what you all do, and this is actually the mistake everyone makes with formats, is you just use like confirmation bias. You pick the part that you like that fits what you want. So I've noticed when everyone saw the format, Dom, their assumption was because the bottom 2 teams or whatever get kicked out, they did what you just suggested. They just thought like, great format, 'cause it'll only ever be the worst 2 teams, so we just get rid of the bad teams. But as you say, what if a team like, I mean, last year it could have been like, I mean, there's a bunch of teams. It could have been a Fnatic, a Vitality. There's a bunch of teams were in dodgy positions at times during the split. Like, what if they don't make one of these? Like, that's going to be the end of the world for some of these big squads that are going for the championship, mate. That would be a fucking big, because think how many weeks you have to sit out. And then you're going to be thinking questions like, if we are a big team, do we make a move? Do we bring up the ERL guy? Do we keep like the fucking star player that's not working? I hadn't thought of that angle. That's true. That's going to put a lot more pressure on certain rosters as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you even just go back through and you look at like, you know, spring last year, for example, and you compare it to right now, BDS would have actually made the top portion of it. BDS actually had enough wins, so the bottom 2 that would have got kicked out were Astralis and SK. But I mean, SK ended up making a run at the end, and BDS was, by the end, everyone just thought that they were the worst team. Like BDS actually would have actually been able to qualify for the best of 3 sections. So there's going to be definitely some toss-ups. There's definitely the format issue or the format change that's really interesting. And the other part that's interesting is like the fact that there's so much roster shuffle this year that I'm not sure that teams are going to be able to like get it together that early in spring. You know, like some of these teams will take a while to actually figure out how they want to play and like how to best utilize all the different pieces that they have, especially with all the imports. Like now there's a lot more imports in the league than before as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. First 3 weeks will be huge.
Yeah, I will say that's another thing I would actually add is also from games like CSGO, we have the big turnover and you have all different rosters and stuff. I'll say, in my opinion, there are 3 possible ways rosters go. They go like this. Either it works almost immediately. You get I'd say maybe like it's a coin flip for me. Maybe half rosters just work basically almost from the week 1. They're pretty good, you know. Basic chemistries are there. You can see how the team's going to play. People are on the same page. Or the other option, number 2, is it takes about 2 or 3 months, and that's ones where you have to build something up, or someone wasn't on the same page, or this player's slightly off, or maybe someone's form is ruining it. And the third option is you never get it together. Like, I actually do think, like, you're right in that sense. That's another thing this format will do. Essentially, the problem is, even though maybe in league context, to win Worlds, it might be better to be number 2 there, where you go like 3 months and then you get the sweet spot and everything's... The joke is, in this format, maybe it means you get fucked on the first one, though. You might have like a really bad first LEC split, whatever they call it now, LEC Winter or whatever. Like, yeah, you're right. That could actually mean... It could actually mean the results are more variable based on like who does the big roster moves.
Yeah,
I wonder if it'll mean in the future people don't do as aggressive roster moves, though.
We'll have to see. Also, the possibility of your team going into this tailspin where it's like you have a pretty decent roster on player, but you lose the first split, so you don't get all that stage time that all the other teams are getting. You're not playing best of 3s on stage. You're playing 9 games, and then in like a month and a half, you're playing another, like you're starting a new 9 games to try to qualify. I feel like that's really dangerous for some of the teams if we do have one of the teams that we project to be like top 7, top 8 actually fall down into that bottom 2 in the first 3 weeks.
What I did was on Summoning Insight, I did do it with Monty, where we did like our own ranking of the teams in LEC, LCS, and LCK. So technically, some people who saw Summoning Insight might actually know like the order I did in LEC, but that's not actually that relevant. Like, spoiler, we're just going to talk about all the teams anyway, and I want to know where you've got them all placed. So what I want to know is this, right? We did it on Summoning Insight to make it fun and like suspense. Like, we did it opposite. Like, you start at 10 and you go to 1. I would say on this show, Dom, in the light of how we normally do things, I think we just start at the top and go down, because we spend more time talking. Spend more time talking about the good teams, right? And we'll just at the end talk about the fucking shitters that aren't that interesting. You want to do it like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I actually think that.
Okay, let's start. Who is your best team?
Who is my best team? So are we talking? Okay, so first we have to define best team.
So I think it's hard for this one. I will say, as a preamble, I actually think this is one of the splits that seems the most wide open at the beginning, mate. There doesn't seem to me like a slam dunk roster on paper like that has to win. Like, I don't think there is one. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it depends, right? Because like Winter is so weird because it's so short, right? It's like Winter, because essentially for those that don't know, other leagues that have 2 splits, like spring and summer, for the 3 splits of LEC, it's really just going to go. Winter spring is like the equivalent of everyone else's spring, and then it's just summer is like in line with everyone else. So the winter split is really strange. It's essentially like half of spring. So I don't know if they'll be able to get it together by then. But my pick is actually Vitality. I think Vitality is going to win the split, which I don't know. I think a lot of people are like they saw Vitality last year. They're drawing conclusions. I know the perk stocks are super low, and that's why I'm fucking buying those stocks. I look at this roster. I see Neon, who's been super solid. He had a great last year, like a top 280 carry in the league last year. Kaiser is Kaiser. Like, we know what he's capable of. And then you add a monster and Bo to this roster. I think the only question mark is Fodun, but T1 Challengers players that have gone elsewhere, they've had a great track record from that team. So he's the player that I haven't watched play, and it's obviously really risky betting on a player that you haven't watched play before. But when I look at this roster, I think they have the potential to be the best. And I guess that's what I'm going with here, because I don't think that there's any other team that I look at that I'm like, yeah, this team is like significantly better than the other teams. Like Fnatic, G2, KOI, those are the other teams that I would put in that same tier of they can win the split. Those are the 4 teams that I have at the top. And out of those teams, I don't think any of them could hit the level that a peak Vitality could hit. Like, if Bo is really that monster, if he is that guy that he was in LPL, it's over for the rest of the league. Like, he's just going to be dicking everyone.
What was your 4 teams? It was Vitality,
Fnatic, G2, and KOI. That's what I've got.
Oh, okay. There's already a spicy one, because as people will know from me, I have XL as my number 1, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's keep going on the Vitality issue. I know what you mean by that. Like, put it this way, in that like explanation of the 3 possibilities, I'm also with you. They would be more like the one in the middle that'll take a while to power up. Because if you just think logically, first of all, the Photon guy wasn't even supposed to be there, and is a fucking Korean top laner. Like, that already has to be figured out. Like, it's not as simple as like, well, it's no problem. It probably should be good. Like, that's Alfari's spot, guys. That's what that spot on the roster is supposed to be.
Or IWillDominate's spot.
Could IWillDominate, true. I've heard there was that rumor as well, yeah. And then, or Whippo, people heard a similar story,
yep.
Right? So then the problem I have is this. Already we've got to resolve that. So let's imagine that gets figured out. Luckily, he's playing in Europe as top lane. Spoiler, you're just a weak sider, probably. That's just the way it works. So at least that could be figured out. The problem is when you said the Bo one there, even though I know you just mean this a turn of phrase, when you were like, Photon's the only question mark. I mean, Bo is a massive question mark too. Let's be real. Like, Because here's the problem, Dom. I'm with you. He did look for real like one of the craziest, like prodigy young junglers I've ever seen when I saw him in the LPL. He looked fucking insane. And obviously in solo queue, he has torn it up. But who the fuck can know how that's going to translate to LEC and these players? Like, you know what I mean? Like the problem especially because of the role, Dom, like I feel like jungler's the hardest role to know how someone will play like in a totally different team. Like I've seen it too much, like in ERLs. I don't think people can't be idiots. They just can't. It's so hard to figure out who actually are the good junglers. Like some of them look amazing, then the shit in LEC. I don't know. I'm with you. If it lives up to the potential, it's going to be amazing because as you say, the rest of the team is fucking banging, like outside of the top lane. Like Perks is obviously, as you say, like the joke is, if people didn't watch Vitality, they think he was bad last year. He was like a sleeper fucking MVP of the whole league, for God's sake. So he's already taken care of. If anything, he's actually at the point in his career where he's ready to win again, fucking hungry. The Neon angle, it's perfect because we were having those discussions with him on this show. And basically, if you remember, Vitality was the only team left that he could join when we went through it all. Because, I mean, the joke is we thought Upset wasn't leaving Fnatic. You know, when you went through all the top teams, sadly, even though Neon definitely deserves to be in the top 3 team, it looked like actually he was going to get fucked over and end up on another like Misfits level, like just a playoff team. So I think it's awesome. He got a spot, by the way, easily deserves it. Like, just look at the last like 2 splits, 3 splits he's done. This guy's a fucking stud. And then if people don't realize, like, I actually think this fucking Kaiser move's fire. I've always thought he was a brilliant player. And I also think as well, I'm really interested how his roams will work with Perks. So I think the rest of the team, aside from top, is banging. But there are still some question marks on this roster.
Sure. I mean, I think for me, Bo is like, he's not really a question mark for me in terms of like his own gameplay. It's like, can his teammates can they keep up with him? Can they keep up with somebody who's going to be playing because like when he played in LPL, the way that he played was extremely fast paced. It's like we are making a play, and then we basically make 4 more fucking plays. Like he wanted to just keep the game fucking moving. And I feel like when you have a player that's that much of a monster and you put smart people around him, you have Perks around him, you have Kaiser around him, like I think that they'll just be able to figure out what the fuck he's doing. Like it's really not that hard if you have a beast fucking player to like allow him to carry you. That's the first thing that makes me think that he's not so much of a question mark. Like, maybe he could have stage issues or something. I'm not sure. Maybe there could be other issues. But in terms of like his overall play, I mean, I just think that his level of play is just too high. He's too individually good at the game for it to, be like, oh, well, he's just gonna, well, maybe he's just a solo queue player. It's like, no, he's not a solo queue player. He's legit in the way that he approaches the game, and he's smart as fuck about the game. That's my first thing. The second thing that I thought was really interesting is when I thought back to Kaiser, I'm like, this guy was good, but what did he miss? What was the missing part of when he lost Humanoid in 2021? Or sorry, 2022. In 2021, Humanoid's big thing was side laning. He was really good at side laning. He could direct the team's mid-game macro around his side laning, which is actually what Perks is best at in the mid-game. Like, he's really good at side laning too. That was his quality. That's why he won LCS, because no one else knew how to side lane in the LCS besides for him. So I think that combination of Perks being able to like take over things in the mid game and Kaiser being able to facilitate things in the early game and do what he's best at, I think it's a really good match of skill sets there between the mid and the support players. So I just think there's a lot of things that are actually good about this team. I think that most people expect it to be good, but they just know that there's the possibility that it's complete shit, right? Like for some reason, Vitality could just be terrible. Like everyone feels that. And because of that feeling, they don't want to commit. They'll be like, oh, he's good. They're good. That's a good team. They'll be second. They'll be third. Maybe like that. But no one actually thinks they're going to be third. They're going to be like first, or they're going to be like seventh. Yes. Like they're not going to be third. So
yes,
at least that's what I think the expectation of people really is. It's just they're trying to figure out how hard they want to go on the Vitality train. So I'm just committing. I've got my Vitality winning the split. That's it.
No, it's fair enough. Like I had them in third, but that's the reason why. Is like some of the other rosters, I just feel like that I can rely on certain elements more. Whereas obviously I have to figure out both the Photon and the Bow angle. I will say on the Bow one though, like is it just if someone has never watched him play before or only watched those like cage or fucking stream clips, I will say this: like I do to just stress how actually like insane the guy's raw skill and like fucking mentality to the game looks. I will say he is a rare example of a player where I'm fine that they did do this gamble though. Because as you say, what you're gambling on with a player who looks with the eye test as good as this is not just like, we got a good import jungler. It's like, like for real, if you gamble and it works, this is a guy who could do like mad damage at Worlds. Like he could actually be the reason you like win a fucking playoff series at Worlds or something crazy. So I think it's worth it. Like put it this way, this off season especially is why I bring it up for the ball point, Dom. In my opinion, this off season really tested all the GMs of the league, because the fact that Jankos was available, and by the way, behind the scenes, I've heard he was available for way less than those news articles told you. You know, the news articles claiming it was like $1 million or more. Dude, I've heard you could get him for like a fifth of that, for real, like a bunch of the orgs. So what this offseason showed me was which GMs actually believe in like young talent or not. Because the problem, in my opinion, is this. If you're anyone except Mad Lions who have El Yoya or this team taking Bo, you should have just been going for Jankos. You should have had your name in the Jankos lottery in the hat. Like, can I get this player, please? Because everyone knows the floor, and Jankos is incredible, and he has the international pedigree. So this is one of the only players, Dom, I would gamble on over Jankos. Like, if this works out, it will be worth it. So I'm with you on that. I see the upside.
And the main thing is that you never had opportunities to get a player like Bo before. Like he was somebody who was expected to be one of the best junglers in LPL. That was what everyone was thinking. Like, yeah, this guy's a beast. He's just going to be the starter. Then
he would be playing now with like Rookie or Knight or something if he'd continued, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like that. I mean, he would have just been playing with Doinby on FPX. Like that's just what it would have ended up being. And they got lucky. Like the West got lucky that he got banned from match fixing, and because of the culture in China, they're not going to pick up a player that has that like reputation. You know, like they don't want to associate that with any of the big teams. So because of that, you actually have access to get him. So to me, it was like a no-brainer. I mean, there's being good in solo queue and looking like you have potential, and then there's just like what he did when he played in LPL. Like when he started in LPL, he just immediately came in and he was just dicking the top tier junglers. Like if you look at like who he was shitting on, it wasn't like he was just dropping like 15 kills against like some random like LGD jungler where it's like, okay, but like what does that actually mean? No, he was bending over like Karsa. Just in his and this is like this is not 2022 Karsa. This is 2021 or 2021 Karsa. Like he was just bending people. Like it was kind of scary what he was doing. So I really like the Vitality committed to him. And not only did they commit to him by giving him a roster spot, if you heard about what they said afterwards, they committed to building the team around him. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to get this player. It's like, now we're just going to get a bunch of supporting pieces that enable him to do what he's best at. Like we're going to get shot callers around him. We're going to get consistent players. We're going to get veteran leadership. You know, we're going to get a consistent AD carry. And we're going to let him really do what he's meant to do. So I like the Vitality roster. I think it's one of the first Vitality rosters that costs a lot of money but makes sense. When you look at other Vitality rosters, there was always just weird aspects to how the rosters were formed. But this one, I actually feel like they got things together and they created something that should be good.
I also think the underrated part of this roster, by the way, is that if people don't know, they changed the coaching staff and picked up Neon's former coach for Misfits, Coach Carter. Well, if you saw, first of all, Misfits for the last 3 splits, well, remember, they did have different players. They had Neon before that. They had a different player, obviously. They had the hit in and out situation for Irrelevant. Like, the joke is, if you actually saw the Misfits team, one, they definitely know how to use Neon. Like, no one's ever used this fucking guy better in his whole career. He was set up perfectly for success at everything he's good at in those team fights. And then 2, dude, they're the people who figured out the meta in the West. Everyone copied them. Even Vitality themselves copied them eventually. Like, they just figured out that front-to-back team fight meta before everyone else. Now, sure, they had reasons to do so because their team was super limited. But, like, dude, I actually think that's a great sign for this team because, one, that's something Vitality looked whack with for most of the time they had perks last year. Like, the actual core identity of the team was non-existent. And then, secondly, I don't know what they would do with Kazi and Vitality last year. So, like, actually having the coach who used Neon, that makes me confident, dude. This team will do the strengths of the players. Like, Perks and Neon could be a fucking god tier fucking team fight duo. Why not?
Yeah. And also, I mean, here's the other part of it. It's addition by subtraction. Like, that Mephisto guy just was never it. He was just never it. Like, every team that he coached, it was always like, why are they performing so poorly? It just felt like he just wasn't useful for some reason. And it could be just like the players that he was coaching or just a bad fit with the players, or maybe he's one of those coaches that works better with developmental rosters, whatever. I like that he's no longer the coach because I think that he's just never been able to actually make teams live up to what they look like they would be on paper.
I always say it like this, Dom, right? Unless it's someone I just particularly know from behind the scenes is scum and shit in their job or something. All I ever say about coaches is like in theory, for all I know, maybe this guy's a good coach. But if it's true, then it's not with this team, is it? Like one thing you can inarguably say is when the team has underwhelming results consistently, then something about the fit doesn't work. So as you say, maybe he even is an awesome coach, but not with this set of players or this style of player, or maybe he doesn't work well with a certain type, as you say, maybe a veteran player or a star player is not what he likes. Maybe he likes the smaller pieces. There's always that discussion. Anyway, I have at number 3, mainly, as I said, because the Bow angle, and then I don't know what's going to happen with Photon yet. Like, I'm actually interested to see later on in the year if Alfari comes back, what would this roster be like? I'm interested on that whole thing. But yeah, we've done Vitality, right? Fuck it then. For the sake of the memes/entertainment, being as I've gone crazy and put XL number 1, and you don't even have him in your contenders group. Let's just do the XL one. So I want to get your take first. So, right, first things first, is this not a bag of roster on paper? Is there some factor, like what's your main angle as to why they're not even in the contender group? Because here's the thing, I could get them not being number 1. There's a bit of fucking hopium in that. But like, I think the roster on paper, though, what a great job this is. Like, looks like an excellent offseason.
Yeah, they're 5 to me. I mean, I guess they could be in the contender roster because I don't think that they're significantly worse than the other teams that I have above them. But when I look at the roster, I just feel like so number one, like when you have Xerxes and IWDominate on your team, you want a carry, which I guess would be Vetio. But like Patrick is the other guy. Normally you need 2 of them, and Patrick just has never been great to me. He's been like good, but I've just always been waiting for him to be better than what we've seen. So I don't really believe in him being able to actually like win a split. Like I feel like this team will be solid. Maybe they don't end up 5th, right? Maybe they end up 3rd or 4th. I just don't think that they have the ability to win. And then Xerxes. So that's one of my issues with the roster. I just don't think they have the firepower on the roster. And then when I look at Xerxes, I'm not sure if I completely like believe in him. I know he had a really good last split, but I watched too much LCS with him playing for Immortals for me to like really just commit to a roster with Xerxes on it. Like he's a weird player. I mean, he's good in certain metas, like with champions that he likes, but if we end up in the meta that it looks like we're about to end up in, with like Elise being played and like Maokai being played, these types of champions, I don't think that he'll be like super good at that type of that type of style. So we'll have to see on how effective he actually is on the team. I think Odo's solid. I think Vetio, for some reason, I feel like Vetio is going to have a down year. I don't know why. I don't think that there's any like basis for that, like in terms of just like any facts. I just have that like gut feeling that he looked good on Misfits when like, you know, he had to carry games and he had the ability to carry games. Now he's in a roster with like all these like veteran, well, I mean, 3 super veterans, and then Targamas is like relatively new, but he's been in a veteran roster overall. I don't know if he'll be as useful as he was in Misfits. I don't know if he has what it takes to like be beating the top players in matches that like matter a lot. Like, is he going to be in a semifinals versus Caps, or semifinals versus Larson, or semifinals versus Humanoid, or semifinals versus Perks, where he's expected to win and actually outperform them? I just can't see it yet, but who knows? Maybe we'll be wrong, but I guess that's my feeling right now.
Some angles for you. So, okay, first of all, I'm definitely with you on the Cersei angle, by the way. My problem with Cersei is this. Whenever he's at the top and he's in a top 3 or 4 team, people do, like everyone, they always want to make it like, maybe he's the best jungler. It's like, look, he's never, let's be real, he's never been the best jungler in LEC ever for a second in his life. Like, Jankos was there. If you go back to different seasons, like, it depends what season we're talking about, but you can go back, but there was always someone who was better than him. But I do think the flaw of his game is actually very impressive. Like, for someone who has so many idiosyncrasies, such a weird style, as you say, beyond the LCS year with Immortals, usually, even when his teams are like mid-table, I'm always like, damn, this guy always gets slightly more out of the game than I think he's going to. Like I always look at him and I always think like, everyone's going to figure this guy out. It's like, they don't. Like, dude, it's actually like fairly good. Like I'd say his consistency is pretty good. I'm with you though, he's not some super stud. So I will say he might be the factor that makes his team live or die. The real one though, to me, I'll go through all the players that you did, but the real one is probably the Vetio, whatever you want to call him, because like the real test, it's like Monty said, I get the sense you're in a similar boat. The problem is this, and I've seen this a lot in sports and esports, whenever you are not just like good, but you are like the carry of a bad/middling team, the problem with that is it does come with perks, as fucked up as that sound. Like, for example, you have the green light 24/7. You have the green light for your picks 24/7. And by the way, he's not just like the carry on a bad team. He's the fucking mid lane in Europe. Like, you basically, it's your birthday party. You're 15 years old and you're a rich kid and your dad has to get you the pony, the fucking pink Barbie, Barbie, Porsche. Like, the joke is you get everything. So yeah, the premise goes, if this is like a super team and all these big names, what happens if in this particular time he doesn't get the same jungle attention? What if he doesn't get the same resources? What if sometimes he has to be the guy who gives up a pick in draft to make it work so that like Patrick can get his fucking god tier Exodia ADC yeah, that's going to be very interesting, Dom. I'm with you. There's a world where maybe he's not as good. Maybe we find out he's like a really good player, but he's not Caps 2.0. Because I will say a lot of why I'm up on this roster and Vethio in general is like, I'm a mark for this guy. I'll just say it right out. In the same way as if I watch LPL, I'm an insane mark for fucking Knight. Like I just make myself believe even the bad games there was some like 7D Jenga reason he was trying to do that. Like I'm the guy where if I'm a total mark, Dom, I even do that thing of like maybe he just died in the side lane because he was trying to draw pressure. I do that shit, right? So I will say I'm sort of a mark for Vethio because I do think eye test wise, I've watched a lot of LEC and I have seen very few players ever come in just looking as good as this guy did out the gate, mate. I think it's fucking insane. So maybe there's a world that doesn't work out, but I'm going to gamble and say it does. So then if you go the other players, dude, I think Odoam is a bit better than just good. Like he's always one of the best. The key thing is he's a bit like Cersei. He's never going to be the complete package. He's never going to be number one. But mate, he's always going to be like number 3 or number 2 or something. Like, yeah. I think it's mad that he was able to go to a team like this. Like that's just fucking found goal. I can't even believe Koi gave him to this team. But okay. So then it's only the bot lane left. Now I'm with you on the Patrick one. You know that from past shows. I have always thought, unfortunately, this guy got overrated. The joke is this, Dom. Actually, I think Patrick is the player you were implying Vethio could be. He's the one where if you just put him on a bad team, he'll always look like the best. But it looks like, bro, if you get all the resources and you were like Patrick on all those bad XLs, shouldn't you be like MVP of the whole league? Like, look, I don't want to fucking diss anyone because he is a good player and he seems like a cool guy. But my mate Forgiven, if you just put a whole team around him like that, he would be MVP like every fucking season. He might not win the league, but I tell you what, he'll fucking show out. Like, if you give him all his resources, everything, he'll look amazing. So I have always wondered the same thing, Dom. It's like no matter how you change the pieces around Patrick, he just seems to play the same. He's never bad, but to me, he's always either like middle of the pack or slightly above. He's never been the best ADC for me. You know?
He's like the 4th best or like 5th best in LEC by like slightly underperforming when he should be like on like a top 3 team, and then like super overperforming when his team should be shit. Like that, and so he always just ends up at 4th, but it's like it's by different methods that he ends up there. I don't know. For me, it's like it's just so hard to have watched LEC for the amount of time that I've watched LEC and be like, Patrick's going to be an LEC champion. Yes. He just, for some reason, and I mean, I could be wrong, but he just seems like he's the type of player that probably will never win like an LEC.
Sure. And then the thing is, though, the last player who I've left is obviously support Targamas. This is like the Odoamne one, mate. How the fuck was this player available for XL? Like, the craziest thing is, I made this point on some of the insight. For me, the XL project before was like being like a small market team in like a American sports league. And you're just trying to make small, cool moves, like one per season, you know, get a better draft pick here. That's what XL used to be. It was like, let's grind out like a tiny edge. This offseason, they got gifted Odoamne and Targamas. Because I have to say, by the way, this is the other angle I'm going to bring up on this, which I think maybe is why, in the same way as you had Vitality higher and I was a bit more tempered, I'm the opposite way on this XL team. Because here's the factor that I think could make this team insane, Dom. Right? Look at the veterans I've got. Odoamne, Cersei, and Patrick are all veterans. They've all played their role for many, many years in LEC. My 2 younger players are Vethio, who looks fucking goated as fuck as a stud, really strong up-and-comer. And then I've also got my support. And look at the timing. This is the 2nd year in LEC of Targamas. Like, look, sometimes players have the rookie year that's good and they go down. Sometimes the all-time great players, though, the next year's the one they really blossom. Like, dude, if this guy is anything better than he was last year, Targamas, and by the way, I think he will be, because spoiler, you can see what you like about Patrick. He's real ADC. The Flakked guy, I always thought was like the fucking limiting factor on Targamas. Like, the joke was, everyone can say, his roams are good. You have to get out a lane to do a roam, mate. Like, what about those games where I'm just stuck in lane behind? Like, I think this could be the year where Targamas pops off, mate. And so that's the thing. Between Vethio, I like those as the young players. So we can have talking checkers. I think it's a very interesting roster. I'll give you that. Look, it could all go wrong. It's not an established roster, but I think the pieces are very interesting. Go on then, hit me.
So the question I have for you is, why do you think Targamas, or G2 let go of Targamas in favor of Mickey X?
I'll tell you why.
Because Mickey X looked better, or looked worse last year, right?
I agree.
Mickey X looked worse and Targamas looked better, and then they already had the younger player. So what was the decision making?
Right, here's the juice I've heard. So I've heard the whole reason why Jankos is out and why Hansama's in is because of this story where they re-signed Caps and they sort of told Caps, it's your team, and he got to choose, right? And then I've heard that Hans Sama is the one who specifically wanted Targamas, and that for some reason that was like the draw. Like, it had to be him. Sorry, wrong way around. He wanted Mickey X, who we used to play with back in the day, instead of Targamas. So I've heard that's the only reason Targamas is out. Like, as far as I can tell, I think G2 was even interested in potentially keeping him until the Hans Sama move. And the thing that shocked me, like I said, is just that he ended up in XL. Like, do you think I'm overrating this guy or something? I think he's a fucking banger, mate. Bear in mind that was a rookie year. I can forgive a lot of those mistakes, And like I said, I think his ADC wasn't that good. So I'm looking. I think this guy could have a really banger year this year. Is there some angle you think on why he got kicked from G2?
Well, I mean, I guess the thing for me, and the reason why I think Hans Sama probably wanted to play with Mickey X is I think that Targamas, it wasn't just that Flakked was not great in lane. I think Targamas was also not extremely good in lane most of the time. So because he like wasn't a laning AD carry, like a lot of laning support, a lot of AD carries that are laning AD carries don't want to play with him necessarily. They're like, I just want to play with, the guy who's just going to like see all the angles, level 2, we're going to go and kill them, we're going to snowball the game. That's like the dream. And that's, something that Hans Sama was best at in Europe. Like when he was really good in Europe, what were his picks? Draven and Kalista. Those were his 2 best champions. He played them whenever it was like in meta or whenever they were good, and they would be able to snowball through the lane. First 3 Drakes were like guaranteed with Rogue, and then there was the whole Rogue time meme where they would just randomly throw the game in the mid game. I think that's the main thing that AD carries are not completely sold on is Targamas' laning. They don't, and that's what AD carries want. They all want to win lane. Like, I mean, most of them want to win lane. All the aggressive ones want to win lane, right? So I think the players in Europe right now don't see him as like a laning support. He just is good outside of lane.
By the way, though, I will say, as an aside, that's why I think it's insane that he was available for XL. Like, I have to say, Dom, if I'm Fnatic and I am doing the following 3 things: 1, getting Reckless, and 2, getting rid of Hylissang, just sign Targamas for fuck's sake. Reckless has played like half his career 1v2 in bot lane with the Roman support. Like, that just seems like a slam dunk to me. Why are you keeping the Rocks guy over him? I know that's by the bike, so we'll get to Fnatic in a minute. But that's what I mean. Like, dude, how did no other team want to bid for this guy? Like, only XL cares about this fucking guy. Like, really? Yeah. That's wild. Whatever.
That's pretty strange.
Right, what about this then? So we did... Let's see. Let's do Koi, since that's an interesting one. So, obviously, they kept the whole team and they just moved IWillDominate and brought Shigenda in, right? Is this an upgrade, downgrade, side grade? What is it, Dom, for you?
It's a downgrade. It's a downgrade for me. I mean, we've seen Shigenda in LEC before. I watched him a little bit in LFL. I mean, he wasn't even the best top laner in LFL. I think that's the interesting part is like, I mean, it looked like Adam was actually better than him in like domestically at least. So for me, I just feel like it's a weird move from Koya. And to be honest, like I'm just like I've become a Rogue hater over years. I'm so fucking jaded at this point that I'm just waiting on I'm praying on their downfall, right? I'm like,
in general.
Yeah, well, no, it's just like I look at Marlon, I'm like, it's one of these fucking splits. He's just gonna just become shit, and he'll never become good again.
You're on the Jesse Pinkman, like he can't keep getting away with this. You're on that
definitely,
shit, like,
definitely. I've just became a hater over some time, but it's like I don't want to be a hater. It's just they let me down too much when I was a believer that now I just I hate that I believed in them at a point, and that's really that's really where this comes from. Sure. So like I mean I think they'll be good. I think they'll be better than people expect. Like I'd probably have them getting like second in
that's why I have
regular season.
Yeah, I have them second
in winter. But it's not because I actually think they're like the second best team. It's just like I'm trying to counterbalance for like the fact that my instincts are that they're just going to be like a 4th place team. Also, I think Trimby is really good and Larson is super solid. So when you have 2 players like that, I just can't see them being like actually bad. Like they'll figure out a way to get it together. So
yes,
I mean there's something missing with the team that I just haven't been able to get over.
Basically, the big problem I have with this squad, because I also have them number 2, is I also think it's a downgrade to go to Shigenda, or at best a side grade. And I think the at best is being there's a lot of hopium in that. Like the experience of IWillDominate is incredible. The worst thing about this move though, to me, is this. You just fucking won and looked really good winning. Then you even went to Worlds and had results over top team. They beat the fucking team that won Worlds, for God's sake. And they can't even run that roster back. Like, that just kills me inside, because the problem was the one thing that team had finally stumbled into, Dom, was fucking chemistry. They actually had some chemistry in that playoff run and at Worlds early on. Like the team looked good together. So why you would risk that by taking out like a mainstay piece like IWDominate, I think it's so crazy. Like I've heard behind the scenes, I know I leaked some of this on some of the internet, but I'll just say it here, Dom. I've heard basically that the Fly guy who's like sort of doing like the GM type role, that he basically just on an ego trip and for some reason had some disagreement with IWDominate, and that he decided that first of all, I've heard that they believe what's called like the G2 doctrine, which is that every year you have to change one player, otherwise like the team gets like stale and people become and people need to like there's something to mix it up. Look, not a terrible concept. I just don't think it's a hard and fast rule personally. And then the other thing is, I've heard because maybe there's some ego involved with these moves. This is a weird comment, but I once heard a great quote where it said, "You can accomplish anything in the world as long as you don't care who gets credit for it." And that might sound like just a weird, frivolous. It's actually a really poignant statement because half the problem, in my opinion, is situations like this. Because what I'm implying is, I don't think this guy would have actually made this roster move if it wasn't for the fact that if this works, he gets to be like, "Oh, I brought Shigendi in." Look, nobody gets to go, "I got IWDominate." Like, mate, he's been there the whole time. He's like a fucking titan of the scene. Everyone knows him. Everyone's known what he can do for like 7-8 years, mate. But if you bring Shigendi in and you win, you're a genius. You're some like fucking, "Ooh, I'm the one who understands the scene." Like, I think there's some of that going on. So I will say, I just think it was unnecessary. That's what I hate the most about it, dude. I at least run it back one last year. I just give him one. Like, you've just won everything. You're at the peak level. Let's see what you can do. But the good news is this. Luckily, of all the positions to fuck up, it might actually be the most forgivable on this team if you look at how the roles were set. Like, I'm with you. If you have the other players they have, like Larson, Comp, and Trimby, those three players alone, it feels like have to be a minimum in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, they can't be bad with those three, surely. Like, not least because, like, I mean, the good thing about Larson as well is you might not like it. Maybe you don't think it's good at the top end. It's a really consistent style of play. Like, just winning mid lane and farms a really good basis for any fucking LEC team, guys. So absolutely. I think I'm with you. I think the floor is amazing. I just don't really believe that they can like win. That's the problem. Like, I actually think that's the saddest thing. Because the other thing as well is when they won, IWDominate also seemed to sort of take the final step and become like a true leader, if you notice. Before that, he was a vocal player before and he'd be a good teammate. But he was more like the teammate who was like your peer before. It seemed like he actually was becoming like a leader in that win and sort of being like, you know, like man management. He reminded me of what Jankos did on G2. So I just find it crazy you gave up your captain as well. I think that's mad, mate. I think it's
which is crazy. It was just crazy in and of itself because Jankos and Odo, those were the players that were never win. Those were the players that were chokers in season 6. Yep. They just didn't have what it takes to actually get a team on board. And now they're like legitimate leaders of teams that are winning championships. I just thought, so while you were talking, I was just thinking about the IWDominate like trade, right? I was thinking about the IWDominate trade and where they really were at like mentally, and obviously you have Fly, who, I mean, you're telling me like had some influence. I think the biggest issue is when you look at G2 and they have that idea of you need to change a player. It's like you've won 9 fucking times, so you have something to base it off of. You're Rogue. I feel like you don't get to go for like some crazy ass concepts like that. You can't just like go for like abstractly thinking we need to do something. It's like, dude, you won your first split. Just keep it going until it fails. Like you have to do that when you have a roster. Yeah. Wins for the first time. That's just like how I view even sports, like in general, unless there's some circumstance that, you know, like I'm like, a player's getting older or something and they're just not able to actually keep up anymore. Maybe you can do this, but with a roster like they had, you want your old man top laner to just be consistent and let your like young bot lane actually really show what they could do, because Comp and Tribby, they could get better and better. Like this isn't. Yep. They could go from being like, oh, we're one of the best bot lanes to being like the best bot lane in LEC.
Just like I said about Targamas, dude. This is only year 3 for Trimby. Like, dude, remember he could get even better himself. Maybe this is like the last 5% or something. Like, yeah, they could get even better.
Yeah, he could just be the best support in LEC for like years. Like that. Yep. That's a very realistic possibility. Like, I mean, if you were to go right now and you're like, over the next 3 years from this point, who's going to be the best support in LEC? Like, he'd be the number 1 pick. Yeah, of course. Yeah. If you just look at where they are in their careers and that, yeah, of course. That's a useful thing. There's a reason why everyone feels like that. There's a reason why he's the number 1 pick. Like, that guy has talent.
Right, let's go on then. Let's move to one. Because here's the thing. Since we talked about them, it'd be fun to do the G2 one. Because I've got to say, Dom, before we get into any other aspect, like Hansama, the return of Mickey, let's just do this Yike thing. Because here's the thing, right? I made the point earlier, and in this sense, it was lucky the show was structured this way. I don't mind gambling on Bo to be better than Jankos, Dom. this Yike guy better be the craziest Midas touch pick of all time, because I think this is mental to give up Jankos in this scenario. Like, if you saw Jankos's game, he can have bad games like anyone. He definitely wasn't like, it wasn't that scenario like, wow, there's no way he's going to be good next year. Like, he looks like he has at least another year, mate. In fact, his style of play, I wouldn't even be surprised if he can just be like a brain jungler for a couple more years. So I think this move's crazy. What do you think? This bringing in this Yike guy to be the jungler?
So I can understand why they did it, because in LFL, Yike was like similar to Jankos in terms of like he had the mind over like everyone. He was the smartest jungler in LFL. In terms of like how I was viewing the game, like everything that he did, it made sense. He had that mindset. Now, if that's going to transfer over to LEC, I'm not as sold. But I think that what they thought was, oh, this guy's got the brain like Jankos, but he's younger and he has better mechanics. So they just saw the potential. It's like, oh, well, if we bring him into the team, he'll be able to still like have the baseline floor. Maybe he could be like El Yoya, where he has like the really high floor. He comes in, he's already playing well. You know, he can jungle with anyone, and then he's got the better mechanics on top. So I think that that's what they're going for. I'm just not as sold, because I feel like being a smart jungler, I think El Yoya is just a one-off. You know, like you don't find junglers that have that amount of poise and just. Like, I mean, the way El Yoya played, it was like when he stepped foot on the stage, he was already a mega veteran. He already had like when he would get behind it. It's not just, do you know how to win a game of League? It's like when you're behind in a game, are you still able to like, you know, stay mentally strong, find the angles that still exist on the map? Like, do you shut down? Those are the things that I'm worried about. So I don't know. I'm not as sold on Yike. I think he'll be decent, but I mean, I'm not sure if he'll be better than Jankos would be for this team. I think he'll be better than Jankos in the context of the split. Like, people will consider him better than Jankos because of the fact that Jankos is just going to have worse teammates. And when you have better teammates as a jungler, that's just the key to everyone just like overrating you. I think that he'll be considered better than Jankos, but I don't know if I believe that, or I'll tell you right now, I don't believe that he'll be better for the team than Jankos would be for the team.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I want to get to, because I agree with you, by the way. Like, spoiler, we'll be getting to Jankos towards the end of the episode, because he's not on a good team. So yeah, don't worry. The idiots that do that narrative thing of like, well, you left and then they're still good, so you must not be the... No, I agree. Everyone will say this guy's better than Jankos, but I don't think he would be better than if Jankos had stayed. Because the key point I want to make here as well is, I also think part of why Jankos looked worse the last few years is because his style of play, he is such a mega veteran jungler now. I do think he's got to the point where it reminds me how some top laners play. He doesn't give a fuck about his score in the game. I'm telling you that right now. He is totally willing to be the guy who just plugs a hole and goes and helps someone, or does some like stupid shit that makes you as a jungler look worse but gives you a chance to win the game. Like, I think he's at that point in his career now. That's why I think he was the captain figure. Like, he was a very a sacrificial jungler in that sense when he needed to be. So I think that's also brutal. Like, this is why it's so crazy that the implication is it's Caps that said we were done with Jankos and we don't want him anymore. Like, here's the difference, guys. I'll make you a prediction right now. I don't know, obviously, who they might get instead of the Yike guy. Maybe the Yike guy even works out. Maybe G2 does go on and win more championships. I think Caps will one day look back and fucking regret kicking Jankos, mate. All I'll tell you is, to this day, Perks thinks he's the shit. Like, Caps wants this guy kicked. Really, bro? Jankos? You do realize, I did this a few years ago when they made, like, in 2020, that semi. But you have to stop and think about it. People thought, because, like, here's the problem, Dom, with hot takes I've realized is, it's the fact that the hotter the take sounds, the less able your brain is to actually sort of get the emotion part out of the way and engage with the point. So what happens is a really good hot take works like this, Dom. You say the line, and then even the one saying the line's like, oh, that is crazy. But then when you think, you go, actually, that's not that bad. So I'll give you an example of a hot take. After 2020, I did do a video where I said, Jankos, are you ready, is the greatest jungler of all time. I didn't say the West, by the way, of all time, any region. Now, that sounds ridiculous, Dom. But if you actually try and sit down and make it, if you actually sit, yeah, I remember you said that. If you actually sit down and make a list, look, I probably was slightly on hopium that it's probably still score or something, you know, like there probably is some Asian junglers and what. But if you ever make the list, the joke is he's at least top 5. Like, there's not that many can make that list with the longevity. It's like what, him, Score, Carcer, like it's not many people, guys. So I just think unless that guy's done, I think it's wild to just toss him aside. I know I'm probably going over the top, but I think this factor actually, it's basically the reason I can't believe in the G2 lineup. If they had Jankos, I maybe could see all the angles. Once you take him out, I just see so many areas it can go badly, mate. Like, for example, we can get to the bot lane thing in a minute. I think there's plenty of problems could happen with that bot lane. I'm just amazed at this offseason. I'm amazed that G2 thinks this is like the best roster they could put in the server, you know.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I'm amazed at about Hansama is how much like everyone just still rated him the same in Europe.
They act like this last year didn't happen. Like, I can tell a lot of people didn't watch LCS, dude.
Well, it's not even about that. Like, pretty much behind the scenes, I'll tell you what happened. Behind the scenes, all the people in Rogue say that Hans Sama is really good. He's just super sensitive, and he needs to be in the right environment. And if you give him the right environment, he'll be great. And if you give him a bad environment, he's going to play like shit. So they just write it off as the reason why he played so terribly. Like, not only like mechanically, like his champion pool, like it was sad to see what ended up happening with TL. By the end of the year for them,
he couldn't even play his own champs. He couldn't even play the Dravens and shit. Yeah, it was a disgrace.
He was literally just playing Jinx and Seraphine.
Yeah,
and like he was just like a weak side, like
the nerf Jinx as well. The nerf Jinx.
he engaged in like a choke off with Danny to see which AD carry was more like more mentally like broken at that period of time. Both AD carries were just like, we're playing Jinx and Seraphine every game, just like don't even look at us. Like even in the team fights, they're like running it down and have to. They didn't even want to participate in the game. It was just to see who could choke harder at that point. And it ended up being Hans Sama. The fact that he could play that bad, like mechanically, and then it just to be written off as like, oh, he probably had a bad team environment. To me, that just like it doesn't make sense. Like I feel like there has to be some level of fall off. Like you know, when he came back to Europe, maybe he was not motivated, and like when he came back to Europe and they saw him grinding all the solo queue, and they're like, oh, he just really wants to be good again. And he didn't put in the effort at that time. But I don't just write it off as like, oh, well, it's just bad environment. Not his fault, bad environment. It's like, well, if you can't deal with a bad environment, like that is also something that is massively negative as something to carry around on the player. Like that is not something that you just brush off like, oh, it's bad environment. We're going to have good environment, so it won't matter. That's how people view it.
I'll even give you an angle on that. Here's the craziest part about that as a premise, Dom. If there's one team where you wouldn't want to risk that, it's G2. Has everyone forgot what happened Reckless? It's the same fucking story. Like, he obviously, when he's in the right environment, is like MVP level player. Like, we all know he's really good. But as you saw when he went to G2 in 2021, if it was the wrong culture fit, maybe even the wrong stylistic way to play the game, it just went badly. It wasn't even, by the way, that it went super badly. Remember, that team was still in position to win the split, so he was winning the MVP. The problem is, though, they were misaligned. So I also worry about the same thing. Because remember, look, here's the weird thing about what they've done in G2. It makes me wonder if Carlos not being there has something to do with this, and maybe now like it is just like real GM staff making the moves. Because dude, when I look at this move now, this is like it's like they haven't learned anything from the years past in G2. Like to me, the best part about the Flakked move wasn't that he was some internationally amazing ADC who would ever hold up. I didn't think he would, but I have to say, total like full marks for picking someone who did an amazing culture fit and seemed to have no issues in the team and seemed to like be a good personality fit. Like that seemed like that was a very well done job, even if I disagree with the in-game stuff. What I worry about here, Dom, is both angles. I don't know if this guy's going to fit the team and whether he's going to fit a Caps type environment. And I definitely don't know if he's going to be that good because, as you say, mate, that last year was fucking whack. And this is the only player I've ever seen who gets totally forgiven. When my mate Soaz goes over, his career's over. When fucking Febevan goes over, everyone's like, we'll have to see if you're any good. Like, dude, they do it to everyone, but fucking Hans Sama just gets to waltz back in. I don't know why. He's never fucking won anything, but everyone's acting like they act like he's Reckless. I get why Reckless can come back, you know.
I mean, the person that did get like the pass that the community was really down on was Perks, right? Perks.
Oh, that's true.
Honestly,
yes,
he honestly did play pretty like. If you look at his overall body of work in LCS, he was good overall in LCS, but he just had some really fucking bad games.
Yep.
But he just got to walk back in because he's just true. He's Perks. He didn't walk in. I mean, he walked into Vitality, right? He didn't walk right back into G2. So for me, when I see this roster, I have just issues with it because I don't know who's gonna give the team that like tough kick in the ass when you need somebody on the team that's willing to like push the team to greatness. And I don't see anyone on the team that's actually going to be willing to like, hey guys, like cut the bullshit, like playtime's over. This is how we're gonna fucking win the game. Like we gotta, and who's gonna be the one that's gonna do that? Because it feels like everyone is like a good teammate, but doesn't have that quality. And I think that Jankos actually did develop that quality where he went from being somebody who's like, you know, tolerant to really saying what he means and push the team over the edge. I don't know if they're still gonna have that. I don't know if Caps is that guy. Like I don't know if BB is that guy. Like I feel like the team, if they start getting into one of those like lulls, who's gonna be the guy that pulls them out and actually makes them like get back in form? That's really what I worry about here. So I don't know. I can't imagine a player getting such a pass. I mean, we talked about it already, but I just can't imagine getting such a free pass for a year of bad play.
Also, to me, the other thing with this roster is, like, I'll just be straight up. I actually just look at the roster on paper, and I'm like, it's not even that I'm going to hate on them. It's just, why would they win the LEC? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, that angle that we all used to do in the years, well, they've got Caps, so you have to... No! Like, Caps isn't enough anymore. Like, the problem is his level is like, you can hate on Larson all you like. Like, yeah, they're obviously very different styles of mid laner, but it's not like Caps is 3 times better. Like, that, we're not in those years anymore, guys. Like, Caps alone. And also, I have no idea how Caps will play in this lineup. Like, this is such a totally different style of G2. I'm wondering, because remember, last year he had times when he was just playing fucking mages. Even when he came to the playoffs on that summer split, he was on fucking Lissandra in the finals. Like, what? So, I want to know, is this going to be like the Caps MVP split, where he's going to go ham, and then maybe that gives him a chance? If he's just like the second best mid lane, I don't think they're going to win, mate. I have this team number 4 on my list. Where are they on yours?
They're number 3 on my list, but that's only
Similar
because
level.
I don't believe in Fnatic. Really, like it's not because I believe in GT.
Let's do that one then, because I have Fnatic as my number 5. So what are your problems with Fnatic for you?
Well, first I'll address the like G2 winning the split. I can see them winning the split. Like you said, like like, I mean, it was rhetorical, but you're like, oh, why, I can't see, why would they win the split? Well, for me, like, I think I'm like, oh, well, BB, if you're in the right meta and you have BB and Caps and they're able to do what they did last year at points where they're able to flex so many champions, that's really hard for teams to deal with. If Elyoya is, or if Yike is similar to Elyoya, where he has that same trajectory where he's really confident, he looks like just a, like, LFL is over, he steps right into LEC, he plays just as well, and you know the bot lane is stable / winning. I feel like they could win. Like that's how I see them winning. It's just I mean, I don't think that's like the most likely scenario. That's why I don't rate them all the way at the top. I mean, we'll end up saying, but yeah, like we can jump into Fnatic.
What's the biggest problem with the Fnatic one? What's the biggest? Because I'll tell you the obvious 2 to me. They're just the most obvious ones. Well, there's 3 technically. One, which no one talks about, is they fired Yamato Cannon and just quietly replaced him with someone else. I can't believe that's not even news, dude. People don't even talk about that somehow. Even though to me that was a massive issue.
Well, he got the blame for everything, so that's true. Like you just scapegoat. Like no matter what, you're like, oh, look at that. They left the Yumi up. You remember the Yumi? True, even though the punchline of all that was the decision that actually got them to beat fucking XL.
Yep,
that's why they won.
Agreed.
He literally won because he was willing to do
that. So the joke
on
that basically is, I'm with you. I actually think it's the inverse. I actually think he did a pretty good job, like pulling them out of the fire, even though everyone thinks he's the reason they don't. Then the number 2 one is, and I talked about this on some of the insight, but I'm just laying all these up because you can go where you want with them. I cannot believe, Dom, if you'd have paused this show at any time after spring finals to the end of last year, if you'd have paused Best Damn League Show and said, right, Dom and Thorin, you have to make a prediction, gun to your head. If you lose, you obviously get your brains blown out. Does Fnatic have both Razork and Humanoid next year? We're both dead now, Dom. We're dead. We're corpses. We never made it in 2023. Like, I can't even believe that synergy still is in the fucking game. And then the third one is, I just don't even understand what went on in the brains of the GMs with the bot lane. So what do you want to take up? Is it one of these you want to jump into? Because these 3 are big for me, mate. I think it's wild. I think they've actually fucked their whole roster up, for real.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, so even more specifically, it just, what Humanoid is going to be playing? Are we going to get Humanoid at Worlds, or are we going to get regular split Humanoid again, where he's just like dying to every fucking gank and it just looks like he doesn't give a fuck? I mean, that Humanoid is so tough to watch because he's so much better than what he's doing, but he just does it so often that it's like you can't ignore it. So
by the way, as an aside, because you'll like this, right? Mm-hmm. This just shows you how weird people are in games when they really like a player. Like they can have cognitive dissonance and ignore everything they don't like. Because all you need to know is this, Stop. I've said this story in some insight, but I've heard behind the scenes that what people say about Humanoid is that he's one of those guys where he has a really hard time like maintaining motivation if he knows he's better than you. Like if he thinks he's like twice as good as you as a mid laner, he might just sort of like phone in like a regular season game, was what I was sort of told, right? The problem with that is this, Tom, right? That's a good explanation for how he is and how he operates. Why do we hear that story? Because I've heard people hear the story, dude, and then go, oh, right, I hope he gets it. No, what are you on about hope? Like, that's not acceptable. Like, what? Like, we're not just going like, oh, well, no problem then. Oh, you just don't feel like playing me. You think he's worse than you. So you lose to him. What? That's the opposite of what great players do. Do you know what a great player does when he senses someone's worse than him? Fucking stamps on their neck and just kills them outright, just destroys them, dominates. Like, dude, I can't believe people are cool with that. Look, I get, there's 2 factors with Humanoid that I do get. One, his peak level play is really, really impressive. I understand why people compared him to Caps. And 2, look, as a narrative, that in a movie, that personality is cool. That's like the rock and roll, like, you know, swagged out. Like it's like the character from anime where they're the genius character with all the talent, but they've got the weird like personality personality idiosyncrasies. That's cool in narrative fiction. Like in real life, like that's quite difficult to deal with. That's not that cool, actually. I want just the guy who just plays League and wins, guys. Like, am I missing something? Why are we putting up with this? Because here's the thing, Dom. There's a lot of players who've had down years. Mate, he had some really egregious fucking times. Like, if he hadn't got his shit together at Worlds, we would be talking very differently about this guy this year.
Yeah, I mean the thing about him playing well at Worlds, it just makes you feel like he's just not trying. It's like, damn, like
Yes,
I don't even know. It makes you like I don't know if I should think less of him or more of him for that. It's like so you can get it together when you want,
true,
but you actually just don't give a fucking run it down. Like,
why don't you want to do it more? Exactly, why do you want to do it every week, fucker? You know,
because like you said, like if you take a great player, right? Like you take somebody like fucking Kobe Bryant, and you hear any of the fucking stories that you get from players. It's like the way he sees that is like, oh, you're worse than me. I'm about to drop like 50 on you. Then like I'm gonna show how much worse you are than me. Like that's the so why does he want? It's like, well, you know what, fuck it, bro, I don't even need to prove myself. I mean, like, do you not care about how other people perceive? Maybe he's just that level. He doesn't give a fuck about anything. He really just does not care.
Also heard Monty heard that maybe he just doesn't actually like League of Legends that much. He was like, no, that's just death. Please. Guys, it's a game where little Asian guys who look mega frail, like they haven't eaten for fucking months, just play 14 hours a day. Like, you're not going to get it. You're not going to make it if you don't love this game, guys. Like, it's League of Legends is already, I've always said this. I don't believe that League is full of toxic people. I believe League, the game, makes human beings toxic. Right? It's already a totally toxic game. If you don't love it, what chance do you have? You're just locked in a gulag playing the game, mate. Like, like if I hear that, here's the difference, Dom. Maybe I could get through to the guy, like I said, the cool guy with the biker jacket who just doesn't care. You know, he's trying to be too cool. If the guy genuinely doesn't like League of Legends, like, I give up. You know what I mean? Like, hello? Can I just get a midlaner who likes League of Legends? Yeah, thanks. Cheers. Like, I just give up at that point. Like, I'm not going on at that point. Come on.
I mean, you don't have to like every aspect of League, but at least like you have to find the part that you like. I mean, the major part of that is like, don't you like just shitting on people on stage and looking really fucking cool and having everyone talk well about you? Like, is that not like, is that not good? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's some ego trip or something, but like when I was a pro player, I enjoyed shitting on somebody in front of like 200,000 people. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like, and then like, even just like you go into like the fucking chat after, you look at like the YouTube comments and you like you don't get any dopamine from that either. Like you got to find something that you like. It doesn't have to be that, but there has to be something that you enjoy about the whole process of it. And, you know, I mean, maybe they play on stage more this year and, you know, he ends up having that you know, drive again. I just want to see him show, like, I think it'll be good for the region if he just puts in his best. Like, he is one of the best, so if he puts in his best, everyone wins. Like, just do it, please. Humanoid, if you watch the show, which I know you don't, because I've even asked you to come on talk shows before, and you said I never go on any talk shows. I don't watch any talk shows. I don't want to go on any talk shows. I don't even want to talk to you right now. Like, just please, man, please, just put in some effort, dude. Do it for Razorg, man. Razorg looks like he's gonna have a mental breakdown playing with this guy. Like he looks like he can't take it much more. Like he doesn't have much more in him to deal with watching this guy in. Yeah, I mean that's the first thing. The second thing about this team is like, I don't know if Reckless is still gonna be a top tier 80 carry in LEC. Like I'm not sure of it. I mean, I think that he probably is still good, but he didn't have an insane year with K Corp. You know, like there was definitely some times where you're like, is he still super good or like? He's very hard to judge, and then I just need to see more of Rux. Like Rux played really well in the games he played at Worlds, but he played like 2 games, so there's a lot of question marks for me here. I think Wonder, it's fucking ironic because I think Wonder is like the most stable part of this whole team. Sure. Wonder's, and he was the guy that on previous G2 rosters you're like, oh shit, he's not playing the game. Like, I mean, I hope he performs, but like, I don't know if we can like bank on it with his level of work ethic. But he's actually the one you're looking to. You're like, nah, Wonder will be fine. He'll be good.
Yeah, the Wonder angle seems like the only one that doesn't have a problem. Like, for example, I even think, even though it didn't work out in 2021, that was because that was when Wonder had his downturn in form. Dude, this time around, I actually think the joke is, if you're Wonder, I think it's amazing you get Reckless. Like, mate, you're actually going to get to play some carry this season if that's the fucking meta. Like, I could see that working out. Like, Reckless is a guy who's very good at playing fucking weak side ADC. Like, that's great for you. The problem is all the other moves, like I said. Like, for example, look, I'll give credit to Fnatic. I understand they didn't think they were going to have Razork. This was supposed to be like El Yoya, and so the plan was reunite El Yoya and Humanoid, and we fixed the problem, right? That sounds great. I just can't believe they ended up where none of the moves worked out, and they just stuck with this mid and jungle, because I have to say, that mid jungle, especially considering, by the way, they finished like second and third overall, third 2 times, by the way, and went to Worlds. I don't know if I've ever seen like anti-synergy from a fucking jungle and mid like that. Both of whom, remember, individually are considered good players. Like, this is one of the craziest anti-synergies I've ever seen. So the idea, by the way, that like Koi can't just fucking keep IWDominate, but we get another year of Razork and Humanoid, like, really? Really? So then the other angle is obviously the bot lane one. I just don't understand why both gambles. Like, for example, maybe the Rocks guy is the move. Just put him with Upset then. I know Upset wants to play, by the way. Why not do that? I've also...
They played well together at Worlds. When they played together, they played well.
Is it, by the way, if in a world where they could have gotten El Yoya and then they just have Upset and Rooks, isn't this like a banger roster to start out with? Like, you got the gamble player on the support, you got the other pieces fixed, we've fixed some of the synergies, we've got good play. Because the thing is, at the end, when you look at this lineup, this is the reason I have them in fifth, Dom. I think this team will just be a team that's in the playoffs every time, but I don't think they're winning anything. I think this is just a worse roster.
Yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, maybe like in spring, because I feel like they'll kind of follow a similar trajectory to last year, where they'll not really have it together until like the end, like maybe in summer they actually like make a run and potentially go to Worlds. I think that's a pretty reasonable trajectory for them to follow, because I don't know how they're just going to click instantly. Like, you look at the pieces, right? And the pieces that are left are the parts that had the least amount of synergy amongst the entire roster, right?
Yes, true.
Like, when you consider Upset and Hilly, like, at least they enjoyed playing, like even when Hilly would end, it felt like Upset just knew he was gonna end. Like,
yes.
Like Upset was be like, okay, I'm like following you up, okay, and then sometimes Hilly would end and be like, yeah, I just knew that one was bad. They had that inherent synergy. Honestly, I blame Humanoid for the issues with Razork, because Razork is like a nervous dog. You know, he's like one of those. He's like a dog that like came from like a shelter that's like been abused, that has that's like scared, that you need to like make feel comfortable, and then Humanoid is not like the abusive owner. Humanoid is just like somebody who's just like really, really, really like hard to be around. He's like a guy who like just like, imagine you're just the nervous dog and you get paired with a guy who's just like watching sports and just like screaming at his TV like every time something happens. And the dog's like, what the fuck? Like, what's happening? Like, every single time he just has a reaction, you just get fucking scared out of your mind. It's just like, it's the worst thing possible for that fucking paranoia. Yes. So I just like, honestly, like, if Humanoid could just like try a little bit harder and back up Razor and look like he actually wants to play with Razor, I think everything will work well. But man, it was impossible to have that happen last year.
Yes. Oh, by the way, on the Razork side, I also think that is another tragedy, the fact that they're doing this lineup again. Mate, from what I've seen of Razork, remember, by the time the playoffs arrived in summer, and especially at Worlds, he was having some really good poppy games, dude. Like, he had some games that were actually looking really good. Like, his mechanics are clearly legit. The problem is, like you say, if you look at his, like, personality, the personality balance in this team is fucking appalling. This team, Fnatic, right now, is, like, Wonder, like, swag out guy who sort of doesn't care. Humanoid, like, just doesn't seem to care at all. Razork, like you say, has got like fucking like big wife syndrome or something. It's really disturbing. He just seems like super nervous about everything, like fucking white to the eyes 24/7, like if he was a dog, like, you know, when they're like really nervous like that. Like, yeah. And then the Rooks guy's a brand new guy, a rookie, paired with, I'm gonna guess, probably the most jaded player in the entire LEC, Reckless, like, who, by the way, I'll make the joke again, is slowly turning himself into the world skin he will never win. That's a bit harsh. That's
okay,
it's a little bit harsh. I can't lie. It's a little bit. By the way, as an aside, this isn't actually a joke. If people are going to look, I understand why no one can take this comment from me without thinking it's facetious. But I actually, as an aside, I'm mildly worried about Reckless Tom, for real. Between one, he looks really gaunt. Like, he looks like he might be like, undernourished, for real. And then two, look, I know people can live their lives however they want. I am a bit disturbed by, like, why is he making his whole body that, like, Varus thing? Like, look, he can do what he wants. It just makes me a bit concerned maybe something's going on with him. I don't know, mate. I've wondered the last few years, ever since he joined G2, basically. It seems to me, if you ever read the interviews, it seems to me like even he's a bit like, he doesn't know, does he enjoy these teams? Is it the right scenario? I don't know what's going on in his career, mate. So that's why I just wonder, because a player like him, I also do think, like we said on the Hans Hammer point, I think he has to be in a comfortable environment. I think you have to be with, I know from teammates in the past, things have to be his way to some degree. He has to be comfortable to perform his best, and he can be really good, obviously. And he's one of the, there's the other thing, I'll give him credit on this, Dom. Of all the players you would predict could bounce back, just like Doublelift and LCS, I assume Reckless will get really good eventually. He's just done it every time, hasn't he? Like, why would you say he wouldn't? There's no reason to bet against him.
Yeah, I think the thing that worries me, like, I don't really read into like whatever like tattoos he wants to get or any of that. Like, I don't I don't even like
Whatever.
think about that stuff anymore. For me, the thing that worries me is I was watching the LPL earlier today, and they did this thing where they were giving like presents to like all these like random players, right? So they gave like a present to Reckless, and what he said, he was like, oh, I'm just like happy that they like remember me, and it's like
that's so brutal in that.
Like, bro, you're like one of the most famous players ever. Like you're maybe you're maybe the most famous Western player ever. You were in LEC every single year on top teams, besides for the last one. Like,
and all those worlds he's been to. He's been like a million worlds as well. I know exactly.
Like, why would anyone ever forget? Like, I should be saying that shit. I'm the one that should be out. Like,
yeah, but here's the problem, Dom.
Like,
the problem with that scenario there, Dom, is that's one of those me think the lady doth protest too much. That's just him getting fucking. Basically, Dom, that's the Reckless equivalent of when a girl in esports just posts on her social media on like an Instagram story, like a temporary thing, like, oh, I'm feeling really low, like I'm just so ugly, Anna, and then like it's like a compliment fishing thing, like all the messages will be like, no, you fucking straight fire, what are you talking about? Oh, you are lit, like all that. They're just doing that. So that's like his version, like, oh, I'm just glad you guys over in the LPL still remember little old me. And then they're all like, no, Reckless, you are a legend, you are the greatest. He's like, oh, thanks, they still remember me, guys. He's just an narcissist, man.
Yeah, I don't know if that's it. Like when I watch it, I'm like,
who knows?
I mean, I don't really know him that well, so I don't know if it's that or if he actually is like that, like low on himself. He's like, yeah, I was in like LFL for a year.
Be both. It could also be both. Like, if people don't know, that's one thing that would probably shock a lot of fans. I know a lot of pros come off as really cocky, but actually, even some really great pros sometimes do lose confidence in themselves like that. You know, something goes against them, they just think it's over. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm like, for me personally, I'm like a very literal person. So, like, I just take people's like words for like that they're expressing themselves as they really mean, which I know like can have its own like flaws in it. But when I hear that, like, I actually just took it at face value. I'm like, damn, like he might actually think that like people don't really like remember him. Like, I didn't even look into like maybe he's trying to like, you know, backdoor his way into compliments or something. I was like, damn, bro, like, are you good? Like, that's how I felt. That's how I felt with the whole thing. So I'm like, he still knows that he's like one of the best ever, right? Like, he's gonna be fine in this Fnatic team. He's still just play like he's Reckless.
No problem for him. Yeah, he should be fine.
I hope so.
By the way, as an aside, before we move on, what do you actually think on the Yamato cannon angle? Because like I said, look, maybe it's an unpopular take. I think he was scapegoated by the Fnatic fans on Reddit the whole year. I think the opposite. Like, here's my problem, Dom. It's true. If I look at the beginning of the year, I even said it on this show. If you have a roster like his, you do have to win. I'm sorry, you just do. The roster on paper did look insane and had its chances to win. So it's not like he can't be fired. But like, I do think once the problems had already been established and once these issues that I think will even continue past his tenure, I think he did a very good job in those summer playoffs through to Worlds, mate. I thought he actually looked like, from what I can infer from outside, like he was one of the main reasons they got this shit together. So I'm kind of shocked by it. I know obviously people are going to know we're biased because he's been on the show, etc. But I wouldn't, if you don't know, guys, look at some of the other guests we have. I don't just stand up for everyone who comes on the show. There's some people I think I even like them on shows. I just don't think they're that good at their job. But I will stand up for this guy. I thought he did a good job.
Perfect example. Right when I was doing the LPL stream, I got recommended. I watched the video. I got recommended your video where you were responding to like people's like dumb takes. Like, it was just you just like shitting on people's bad takes. Kadril was on our show twice, and you were just shitting on Kadril like a month later, just like going off on him. So
it's true. That is true.
I feel like no one has to worry about that with you. But yeah. Back to the Yamato point. For me, there's this like, I understand what the idea of it is. Like, if you're a coach of a team that has a good enough level of players, you just have to win. You have to win, and it's your job to motivate them no matter what. Like, it's your job to get them in a position to win no matter what. But like, that is not actually possible in every situation. That's just something that you like to say because that's like the job of a coach. It's like, well, you know, he just didn't find the right way to motivate them. Like, trust me, if I went on a team and I tried to lose as much as possible and I'm like, nope, not going to practice. Nope, I'm not going to do this. Not going to do that. And I just protested as hard as possible. You cannot motivate somebody who does not want to play unless you have like full roster control where you can start benching stars and you can like do a whole mastermind, you know, concoction there, which is not the power that you have when you're a Fnatic head coach. Like, when you have players of that caliber, you have to keep those players unless something crazy happens where you can justify. It's like, well, this guy like did something super fucked up, or he like, you know, physically assaulted a teammate, or so. Unless something crazy fucking happens, you just have to stick with those players. You don't even have the authority to really do what you want to do regardless. So I feel like being an esports head coach, I mean, that's the reason why it's not that appealing to a lot of people that could potentially do it. You look at the situation, it's like, damn, that is the most thankless job. Like, when you're a coach, and if you are a coach of a really good team, you have the potential to win, and you don't win, you just get shit on. And if you win, you didn't deserve any credit anyway because the players you had were so good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's basically what Grabs' whole fucking life was like in the G2 Super Team, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
Like, that was just it every day for him.
And now look at Grabs. Look at Grabs. He's trying to stream. His internet's dying every day. He's just some drunk German dude flaming in German while playing TFT. Look what happened to him, man.
Exactly. There you go. Right. What about this then? I'm guessing just because of the order we've got in. Mad Lions is your team after these ones, right?
After the top 5, yes, Mad Lions is my 6th.
Just like, let's be real, Heretics, SK, Astralis, BDS are obviously the bottom teams, just what order you have them in. So basically, the question with Mad Lions is this, right? I have a question specifically for you, Dom, which is, didn't how playoffs and worlds work out shake your faith in Niski a little bit? He was the MVP for you, remember? He wasn't your MVP player, right?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely did, but at the same time, like, I don't know, the team looks so strange that it was like, it's really hard to know like the cause of it. It's like, it's such a team-wide collapse that I just felt like they lost like all of the confidence they had. But then also there's the other part of it where I feel like they got exposed for not being as good as everyone thought they were, and I think that mentally destroyed the team. Like, because everyone was like, look at LEC, they got MVP, All Pro first team, and then they were like the second seed, like tied for first or something, or like maybe like one game under first going into the playoffs. Like, there was too much hype on this team for how good they were, and I think that they felt like they got exposed, which I guess they kind of did, and they were just never able to recover from that. But I mean, when I look at that team, it's not that I think that like Niski will just be like worse than LEC. I think he could still do really well in LEC. I just don't like the other pieces that they have. Like, I think Carzzy ran it down last year. I think he was the most egregious part of that Vitality roster where he would just sprint it. Hillsong had his worst year ever that he just came off of, and I know nothing about their top laner.
Combining, in line with what you're saying, combining two players on a down year like Hillsong and Carzzy together in the same lane. And also, let's just be real. They're not even players I see having any overlap with like style, dude. Like, what? Like, isn't that in English we say like chalk and cheese? Like, how's that going to work though? Is that just going to int C?
I mean, I think that it's just like they're just gonna like go ham as fucking lane. Like, that's just their thing. They just need to kill you level 2, or they're just gonna go 0 and 100. They're gonna be 100-0 or 0 and 100. Yes. That's. I mean, even though it's not like the best style ever, I think that there is some synergy between how they both want to play the game. I think that we're gonna see some shit. There's gonna be some games where it's like, holy fuck, they died 7 times in 6 minutes. Like, I didn't even know that you could die that many times with respawn timers. Like, you might even not be able to, maybe like Carzzy's gonna have to take TP and shit and TP back and die an extra time to like set world records. Like, there's gonna be some absolute sprint downs coming. Still, like, for some reason, I think they'll be better than, like, I think people are really down on them. I think they'll be better than people think. I don't think they're gonna be just like complete dog shit, but I don't see them being good enough to like beat the top bot lanes in the league or anything.
You know, a point Monty made on Summoning Insight that I hadn't thought of, but I think is actually a very valid one to bring up for this specific roster, Dom, is, mate, we're really going to find out what the mentality of Elyoya is like now, because people might know from the offseason if they read those articles. Essentially, Mad Lions completely fumbled the transfer of Elyoya. He was supposed to go to a bunch of teams for money, like, that would seem amazing, and they were turning it down thinking they could get more, and in the end they got all the offers retracted, and basically he just stays in the same team, right? Imagine being Elyoya, Dom, and remember the story last year was maybe he would leave after the spring, if you remember. That was one of the moves. Maybe he goes to a Fnatic back then. Off-season, everyone thinks he's either going to G2 or Fnatic, one of these massive teams. He doesn't, and he ends up not only still in Mad Lions, but as we're saying, probably a worse version of Mad Lions, one that actually might have some problems. Dude, if he can still be like an MVP level jungler, this guy is just fucking like GOAT material. Like we'll actually find out this year how his mentality is, because I could easily see if this team goes badly, you could lose a lot of fucking motivation if you're him. Because the other detail to throw in as well, Dom, is this. Think about this. This is going to be his 3rd year. He won the championships in his 1st year, remember? So in his 3rd year, not only is he stuck in a worse version of Mad Lions, but it's Mad Lions as well, so he's not even getting mega paid. Like, this year or last year, if he'd have moved and gone to a G2, he would be getting like the highest salary, like, there's a lot of factors here that could drain this guy's motivation. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's definitely fair. And then also, I mean, it's like something you deal with like when you're a streamer, right? When you start off at the top, like if you get really big, let's say you start off as like a 20K Andy on Twitch, you're just getting 20,000 viewers. Even when you're doing pretty good, if you're ever less than that, you're gonna be mentally fucked. Right. You're gonna be like, oh my god, my stream is so fucking dead. It's all about relevancy. It's all about your starting point. So when you win in your first split, even if they're like a top 3 team, it's not gonna feel good to him. He's gonna think like, oh, like 2 years ago I was winning. So it's very hard to like maintain that like enjoyment and that like positivity when
Sure.
when you look yourself in the mirror, you're like, oh yeah, like we're just doing worse. Like this is just a worse team than before. It's really hard for play. So it's almost like a curse if you end up winning so early in your career. You see a lot of people that win, and unless you're able to maintain it like Perks did, and it's just like 4 championships in a row. Unless you have a career like that, you see a lot of people like win and then they just fall off completely. Because I mean, look at the other guy that they won in their first career. Look at how Armut's career has looked. It's like, oh, he's promising, has some like lane, and then it was like everyone just flamed the fuck out of him last year, the entire year. It went from being this, he can play all these different Gnar skins, like he can play Dino Gnar, Gentleman, and now it's like he can only play fucking Gnar.
I know. And now it's like he can't even play an LEC anymore.
Yeah, it's like send him to NA, and don't even send him to a good NA.
Know,
send
exactly.
him to fucking Dignitas. Like they really just banished him. So it's rough, man. It's really rough to look at. So I don't know. I mean,
I know when you put it like that as well. If you go back to like when they were just about to fail to make playoffs in spring last year, you're right. Like it was still a meme back then. It was like, lol, he only tries in the playoffs. This is totally fine. And then it's like 1 year later, and it's just him in a Dignitas jersey. Like, hello, guy, are you not entertained? Like,
oh, the best thing. The best thing is gonna be if he gets replaced at any point in the split for Hoon on Dignitas. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. If Hoon takes Armut's job, then it's just like, please, like, just don't send me to that reality. I don't want to live there.
Also think how fucked up the summer was, where like the whole league just voted every one of his teammates. Like the best, like, I know, and then on him, they're just like, well, he can play Dino Gnar, Glacial Gnar. So fucked up. That's so stupid. I know.
It's even more fucked up when you think about it. Like okay, so let's just take away like all the memes, right? And let's just go mathematically here, right? So if you have the best jungler, best mid laner, best AD carry, and best support, if you are not the best team in the league, that means that your top laner must be like a silver player, like a legitimate silver player from solo queue. Like it has to be like you're playing every single game 4v5 for them to be so fucking bad that they ruin the whole team. Like this is man. We're lucky that Armut has such a good attitude because this will break most people. Like this is fucked up what people are doing to him.
It's mad, isn't it? I know.
And best coach. We
yes, best coach and staff for the split. You're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Even though technically it should have been Misfits, but yeah, whatever. That was 100%. The way it was voted. That was the way.
100%.
It's true. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's enough on the Mad Lions one, right? Obviously,
we just blamed Armut for like 10 minutes and then we just all right, enough Mad Lions.
No, we did talk about like the others. Oh, by the way, I will say as an aside, the reason also I'm excited to see that thing of like Will Elyoya's mentality hold up is because, dude, I am just every year more impressed with that guy. Like I even thought with like how shit their team was at Worlds, dude, he was carrying them like nearly all the games at the beginning. Like he was fucking smurfing, even though he was shit at Worlds. Like in the playing section, he looked very good. So I think that guy, he does check out completely the eye test for me, Elyoya. He has to do what he didn't do this split. He has to get to a top team. But if he does, he looks like he can be like a Jankos type career, like years and years at the top, tons of championships, play with anyone. Like I hope this is just like a road, like a fucking a blip on the radar, as it were, and he just gets past it. Right, what about this then? We'll talk about the others a bit quicker, but thoughts on Heretics? Obviously, we've alluded to it earlier. It seems like you're on the same boat I am, mate. Like, my joke goes like this. It's great for Heretics, you can get Jankos. If I'm Jankos, though, I'm like, how the fuck did this happen? What? Like, I think it's mental, the idea Jankos is on this team, mate. Come on.
Yeah. So I have a kind of hot take here, where I think Heretics is going to be bottom 2.
Ooh, that is spicy. Okay.
This split. I think that they're not going to make it.
By the way, I will say, I do notice, Tom, this is a very interesting distinction to make. Nobody is telling me that they're not going to be bad because the players are good. I'm not getting any hype on the players. Everyone just seems to take the fact that Peter Dunn's the coach and just assume he's going to work miracles. That's the only angle everyone's giving me.
Yeah, but the thing about that is when you look at Peter Dunn's track record, what he's really good at is taking like rookie teams and developing like the team himself. But like that's not the team that you get Jankos on then, if that's like your mentality. True. And then also like Evie is like a mega veteran as well. Look, maybe Ruby will be decent. I don't know anything about the guy.
Right? A lot on that guy. Let's be real. If that guy isn't a good mid laner, they're not going to be a good team, are they?
Well, because when you think about it, this team reminds me of that Immortals team from like season 10, where they had all these veterans together, but they didn't have like,
one, yeah,
the SOAS one, right? Maybe Jack Spectre can be that guy. But when I look at like Mursa, Jankos, and Evie, it's like these are a bunch of facilitators. And like unless Ruby and Jack Spectre are really like top tier, like unless they come in and they're, you know, absolute, you know, top 5, top 4 players in their role in the split, like you're just gonna be too far behind. You need to have that firepower. And then I think about Mersa in lane. I don't think Mersa's best aspect was his laning. And then Jack Spectra is like a Draven guy, so he's supposed to be really good in lane. So how is that going to work? How is that dynamic between both of them going to work? I just feel like there's too much going on here. So when I'm looking at it, I think that like Jankos is really good. I just don't think you put him on a team like this. You put Jankos with the players that when you surround him with good players and allow him to be the person that makes the game work, that figures out exactly how the team is going to win from minute 0 to, you know, minute 30. This team isn't that. Like, you're going to need a different type of player here. I think that what you want on this team is you want the person that's going to pop off. It's like the reason why Xmithie didn't work on Immortals. Obviously, Jankos is not as extreme as Xmithie. He's not like as bad mechanically or anything like that.
I get the point, though, yeah.
Yeah, but that's essentially my overall point. I think you just have too many like role players on this team.
Yes. No, I saw immediately why you were doing the analogy there. Because basically, the point Dom was making was, obviously, Xmithie's whole strength and skill set at that point in his career was being a supportive element and setting up other people. And you gave him a team where he didn't have the lanes to do that. Like, he couldn't, essentially, his best quality was nullified. So I agree. It's not as extreme with Jankos, but it is basically the same thing. Like, if one of the whole reasons I've even made this point myself as to why I would never kick Jankos out is because look at people like Caps having the best splits of their entire fucking career playing with this guy. Like, he's obviously doing something. So, but the problem is, like, is Ruby now going to be the MVP? Of course not. Like, we don't even know if the Ruby guy's good. Yeah. And in fact, in general, across the team, I'll just say it right now. This is exactly what I warned everyone about last year. If you remember when I heard Heretics was going to buy the Misfit spot. Remember, I told everyone that if you actually look at how the teams were operated, give me Schalke over BDS any day. Well, I'll say the same thing. Give me fucking Misfits over Heretics any day. These rosters are shit. These rosters are just fucking whack. BDS last year, it was obvious there were no hopers. They're no hopers this year, for fuck's sake. Heretics, they're no hopers. Remember, Schalke and Misfits used to constantly be playoff teams. These were teams that even if they're borderline, even if the budget was lower, they would just have GMs that would just make it work. They'd go and they'd find a player here and get a veteran here and get an up-and-coming player. Like, these two teams that have come in LEC, they're doing nothing right now. And the only hype on the Heretics one is 1, Peter Dunn, and then 2, what a weird roster. Wow, I've got like an ERL guy, Jack Spectra, with fucking like Evie from the LGL. Like, that's it's not wrestling, mate. You know, yeah,
I'm super low on Evie. I think Evie is going to be like the worst top laner in LEC, or one of the worst top laners in LEC. There's nothing that I see about that Evie guy that, like, when I saw him internationally, that made me think that he was fit to be on like an LEC roster. I don't even know how he ended up there. Like, he's somebody who's later on in his career, he's been a pro for like 7-8 years. He was just like a weak side top laner. Why would you want him on this team? I just don't understand, especially when, you know, I mean, obviously Irrelevant was on the Misfits team, so you'd assume that, you know, that would be a potential option for you. So yeah. I look at this, you know what it reminds me of? When I think of Jankos, right? He's really good. It's like in solo queue. He's really good in challenger games. When you put people around him that are good, he can figure out the puzzle. Like, okay, we're a little bit behind here. We're ahead here. So that means that we play towards this side of the map. We like, you know, we cut off resources here, and then, you know, we play towards this condition of the game to win. He's good at that. When you smurf, right? Like, when you play, like, not all challenger players are good at smurfing. Like, I mean, all of them are going to be able to climb, but there's going to be players that know how to win bad games better because they do things that don't make sense that they know will be really good for the game if it ends up working. And that's the type of player I think you need in a team like Heretics. You need to have a player that's going to like camp a brush where it's like, yeah, like all this is losing, but whatever. Like, I'm just going to get myself ahead and then snowball myself and carry the game. It's weird to think about Jankos trying to do things that don't make sense. Obviously, the counter to this is if Ruby ends up being legit. If somehow all the laners end up being good, and then you got the fucking perfect jungler for this, and then they're like one of the best teams in the league. But it just seems like there's a mismatch stylistically here.
What about SK? Because here's the thing, as much as SK is always going to be slightly underwhelming because they're never going to spend big bucks, there's obviously the upside of getting the Marcoon signing, though. And then I'll also add, even though they might not think this, Dom, I'm just going to have hopium that Febby gets off the fucking academy team and just gets in the main LEC squad. There you go, problem solved. Get Marcoon and Febivin, not bad.
Yeah.
Little Dutch connection.
Yeah.
Could happen, happen.
I've got a couple hot takes that I thought about. I think Marcoon's going to be one of the best junglers in the league. Like, I think he'll be like just a top tier jungler in the league, like just one of the best.
What reason? He's just going to be unleashed? What?
Just because I just think that his way of playing the game, like he just knows what to do, and he has the mechanics to play any champion that comes into the meta. So when I think of like him as a player, like he's going to be the guy that's just always going to be ahead early game. He's going to have a plan, and I think that he'll be able to do that with the players around him. I just think that it's going to be one of those sad situations where the jungler is the best player on the team, and eventually the team just collapses because of it. So that's one of the ways I see this team going. Irrelevant. He was good last year in a tank meta. I don't know.
Sion or something, he's good. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we end like Cassante seems like a pretty good champion for him. It's not as tankish as like, Ornn. Like you do have to have like some idea of kill thresholds and things like that. I just think that if we get into like a really bad meta, like I don't want to see a Jax meta with Irrelevant. I mean, literally when Misfits played, it felt like every time that he played something like Jax, you just lose the game instantly. Like every time I saw him lock Jax, it's just go next. Jax, Gwen, all that stuff, just go next. He just needs to be on tank. So I feel like meta could really, really negatively affect SK. And then I'm not completely sold on the bot lane either. That's the other issue for me.
I also just don't buy that. So the problem I have with that team is it has a couple of all right players. It's another team that lacks the carries. Like they just don't have the firepower to do much. So for me, like I have them as my third worst team. I have number 8.
I have them at 7. I have them at 7 for this split for winter. I have them at 7. I have BDS at 8, and then I have 9 Heretics, 10 Astralis.
So to be fair, you are doing yours based on like the first split, like this LEC. Where I'm shocked you have BDS that high, because for me, BDS are the clear worst team. Why do you have this roster higher up?
Well, they have a lot of pieces of BDSA, and so like they have like some inherent synergy. I don't think Adam will be that bad, like he was last split. And then I feel like Lebrov will actually play pretty well. I feel like he'll do well in a bad team. He's that type of player that I think he's just not good in a good team, but if you give him the opportunity, it's like the same reason he's good in solo queue, right? If you give him, subpar teammates and he's able to just be unleashed and be the player that he's meant to be, I think that he'll be solid. So when I look at the roster, I mean, I think maybe mid jungle could be an issue. I think Sheo was hit or miss. Like, I mean, I watched a lot of LFL BDS Academy games. He had really good games and he had really bad games. It seemed like he was very like streaky, and he seems like the type of jungler that has the quality that we talked about earlier, where some rookie players will just shut down if they're behind. Like when we were talking about Yike, it's like, oh, could he possibly be this? I think that Sheo is that player. If the game's not going well, he's just going to be useless. He's going to be completely invisible. When I look at like their overall players, like Crowny Lebrov, I don't think that that's going to be a bottom tier bot lane. Like I think that'll probably like I see that bot lane being around like 5th, 6th, 7th, like in that tier. I don't think that they'll be bad. Also, they played together before on Vitality, and they were pretty good in lane. Like Crowny was able to get leads with Lebrov there, and if Adam's like able to play his champions, and look, we're lucky because his champions are actually meta. I think one of their huge advantages in this winter split is that Cassante is meta, which it seems like something that Adam would play. It's like a bruiser, tankish champion that fits into what he plays. And then the counter to Cassante that they're using in LPL is Olaf, which is like Adam's champion.
There you go.
So, yeah. So when I think about this dynamic, I mean, obviously I'm a little like I'm using the context of what I think the meta is going to be to go into this, but I feel like that's what you should be doing in this situation anyway. So yeah, I mean, Nuclear Int, he had good games. He had good games and bad games. He's not somebody who's going to know how to like win every game, but he's not a terrible mid laner. I mean, he knows how to play mid. His CSing is fine. It's just he's not going to be able to pull a team out of a bad situation. If the team says, hey, we're going to fight this Drake, and it's a really bad Drake to fight, and he knows it, he's not going to change the situation. He'll just commit and die with the team, and you'll just lose. So I just think they have enough there to win some games.
By the way, I'm with you that actually, despite the fact, obviously, we were just like way back in the day, me and Veteran called the Broxer Fnatic angle was bullshit. We did call, even during his best ever split, that Adam was fucking overrated. The problem is, Dom, I'm with you. I don't go too far the other way. If it's the right meta, he can definitely have like some impact and have a bounce back. It's just he's not going to be a top player. And I have to say, the thing that aged the worst, if you're a fan of Adam, was remember the whole take during his first split was like, but he's just still a rookie. Like he's just young, so give him time and he'll learn the other champions. Guys, this will now be like, he's already played last year. I know he went down again. Now he's back again. Like he's now had quite a few splits, and spoiler, he hasn't mastered all the champions. He hasn't got all the picks.
I mean, he'll be in his 5th split as like a pro player. Like if you consider LFL pro tier, I mean, he's in his 4th split. Like 2 years, that used to be an entire person's fucking career. Like
agreed.
So, I mean,
it doesn't take that long to learn the champions. If he was going to actually be like a really good player, he'd have got it by now, guys. Come on,
he'd have got. The thing is, like he he learned new champions. Like he can play a little bit of GP, he can play a little bit of Jace, but it's just like not on the same level. That's the problem.
Yes.
It's like there's a difference between learning a champion and actually being good on the champion. Like Armut plays a little GP, Armut plays a little Jace. He's still a fucking Gnar one trick because he's only really good on Gnar. If there's still a big gap between what you play your best and the next tier of champions, it's just not going to be as effective. Because when you think about the other players in this league, like if we end up in a GP Jace meta, like I mean, half the league is just instantly better than him. Even people that aren't thought of for like Jace or GP, people like IWDominate, like no one thinks about IWDominate Jace. It's kind of like the opposite of what he's known to play, but he's actually a better Jace than Adam. Like he's better at Jace as a champion than Adam.
No, you're right. It's about how your team play around it. I agree.
Yeah.
By the way, does that imply that you have Astralis bottom?
Yes.
They're your worst team. Because here's what's funny. I feel like everyone else is on a weird angle. Because I've heard a bunch of people who think that like this team has like potential. Like, dude, I think it has nothing. Like, look, all it has for real now that Cersei left. Because remember, like that team was living off Cersei being the best player, and then fucking like maybe some mystical shot calling for Vizicachi. Like all this team has is the Young guy now. Like what the hell? This should be like one of the worst teams. What are they going to do? Maybe have the odd Finn pop off. You could have the odd Finn pop off, maybe like 1 or 2 games of split.
You know what it really is when I look at the team, because I don't think that any of their players are bad except for 113.
The 113 guy is sus if you watch the RLs, yeah.
I watched him with K Corp. He was like,
he was like the
reason why K Corp lost. Like he made sure they lost. You know?
Yes,
it was you know when it's bad when you flame a K Corp players and then K Corp fans agree with you. That's how you know it's fucking bad. Because normally you say something about a K Corp player and you look at your DMs and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck? Like you check your tweet, like, did I say something like racist towards like somebody? Like what the fuck must I have typed to actually get this reaction? It's like, oh no, you just said that like this guy made one small mistake in the game. By the end of it, I was like, yeah, 113 is just not it. And they're like, yeah, we agree with you. He really just was bad. He was just not good. The fact that he got promoted after that performance is mind-blowing, because it should have went the other way. It's like he got a chance to play with what was projected to be the best ERL team.
Yep.
They ended up winning an EU Masters. Dude, they went out early in playoffs in LFL. Dude, they weren't even top 4 in LFL. They were bad in LFL. You can't have that. You can't have that and then get promoted to LEC. I don't understand. And like it was because of him too. Like you look at the other players on the team. You have Reckless. You have Cabashard. You should never have that result.
I think it was just hired off narratives of like, well, they won EU Masters, like you must be good or some dumb shit like that. To be fair, Astralis is one of the orgs I've heard is like not that great for pay and stuff like. I imagine it's not a big destination for that way.
I have no idea how he was selected. I literally couldn't even start to begin to think about why he got selected. He was really bad, especially at the end of summer, which is what you look at. Like that's the most recent part that you got to see. His most recent games that he played competitively were his worst games. I don't know. Maybe there's an idea of like, oh, well, the problem was he was in a team with so many big names that he wasn't able to really play the way he wants to play. He's always been a high-rated solo queue player. I know I was checking like the EU ladder at points and he was top 5, top 10. So it looks like mechanically, like, and his like he's able to at least know how to beat other good players in solo queue. So they look at that and they're like, oh, well, maybe he has good mechanics or maybe he has like a decent game sense, but he just wasn't unleashed with K Corp. You just had too many people that were trying to make him into a jungler that he's not. Maybe that's the reasoning. That's pretty much all I can think of when it comes to him.
The thing is, I have to say, I think the weakest parts of this team is the jungle mid. Good luck having success in LEC without a good jungle mid, by the way. Like, the fuck's the point of the team? You know? Yeah. Just nothing, in it? This team's doing nothing this year. Come on. It's nothing at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have them just dead last. I don't know.
I have them 9th, but even so, who gives a shit? Like I said, for me, one thing I will say, we'll make this the last topic and we'll wrap after that. One thing I would just say as a general take is this. The weird thing about EU this offseason is I actually don't think any of the lineups are as good in theory as like how good Rogue and G2 ended up being last year. I don't know if any of them are going to be I don't think anyone could do like a G2 2019 or something and be some like international. I think like the thing is in LEC, I feel like they've got more contender teams, but it doesn't feel like one team's like got some goated like god tier lineup or anything. I don't think anyone did like a crazy impossible job. Like even when I say XL like won the offseason, I mean relative to the fact they were just supposed to be like they were a borderline playoff team that like now maybe contender. Like what do you think on that sense? Like, I feel like there's a lot more parity, but I don't feel like there's that many killer rosters to me this time round.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely weird because I mean, if Vitality doesn't end up being insane, you look at like the two teams. You look at G2, and then you look at Rogue, Koi.
Yeah.
When you look at their team, it's like getting Sagenda instead of Odo. Like that should be a downgrade on paper,
Yes.
right? Maybe it turns out to be a side grade. Maybe it turns out to be a slight upgrade. But on paper, that's a downgrade. And then you look at G2, and I don't think that their roster changes help them out that much either. Like they're just introducing a lot of new pieces, and that normally takes time to work well. Whereas like if you looked at the G2 roster last year, it felt like there was that like the team liked each other. They had that power where it's like the whole team wanted each other to win. That's actually really powerful. When you want your teammates to succeed, as fucked up as it sounds, a lot of people like they have like resentment. It's like, damn, I want to win, but like I kind of don't want this guy next to me to win. Well, that's going to be a little bit tough when it comes to actually getting it done and getting championships. So I just don't know what. Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot more parity in the league, but there's the top teams, like the concentration of top tier players. They did the opposite of what LPL did, where LPL had like the top tier players were spread out over like all the teams.
Yes.
And then they just concentrated like all into the
they
top
made like a
six
bunch
tier.
of banger rosters. Yeah, like three killer rosters. Exactly. Yes, I agree.
It was like the opposite
Yes.
for it was the opposite for EU, and I think that's why both of us have like a unique winner. Like you have XL and I have Vitality. Is you want those rosters to be the best. If one of those rosters are the best, that means that like okay, then maybe they can. Then maybe if one of those rosters hits their like top tier of gameplay,
I know what you mean. I can't lie.
EU.
If somehow Koi or G2 is best, it just means essentially I have less hopes for EU at Worlds. Yeah, you're right. In a fucked up way, I have to believe one of these teams makes it. Either way, either way.
I'm in the same boat.
Because I'm with you as well, by the way. As a broader point, I don't watch as much as you, but I've been watching LCK and LPL as the beginning now, etc. Like, if you look at all the rosters, the joke is this should be the best year for the LPL ever. As Dom says, they've put together multiple teams that could win everything. Whereas I actually think in most of the other regions, like I say, that slightly weaker rosters actually now was the top teams from the other regions. So for LEC especially, I don't think it's the best. By the way, as an aside, one name, I just thought of this because it's conspicuous that we never mentioned it. Dude, this is where I'm so sick and tired of how fake esports is. How like people who are other fellow players and teams just play into Reddit narratives and lean into them when they know it'll sort of get you free engagement and free likes and popularity. Because this is what's so whacked on. Think about how vociferous and fucking vitriolic the fans of Flakked were last year. You must know this. Every time you ever criticize them, it's like Adam fans. They're in your ass, they're in your DMs and all the fucking, well, not DMs, I don't have my DMs open, but you know what I mean? Like every reply, a million of them, right? Think about this logically. The entire league, essentially, through action, just told us they don't even think Flakked's any good. He's not even, if people don't know, he plays for Heretics Academy. He's not even on Heretics. Now, here's the thing about that, Dom. I do feel like that might be slightly too much. I actually thought from how he played last year, look, I don't think he's a top player, but I think he probably did earn a spot on an LEC team. That's wild. But the fact that we're now just going to like Adams delete, he put in the memory hole. We're just pretending this guy never existed. Last year, if you even said he shouldn't be on G2, you were like a moron or something, or hater, or, you know, like, this is wild that he's not even in the league. What the hell?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's wrong. Like myself, like I would take him in a heartbeat over Carzzy. Like with what they both showed, I mean, I think that Flakked deserves to be 5th or 6th. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said earlier. It's the same thing as what happened with Adam. You know, he was really, really overhyped. You know, because people were being unrealistic. Like he had good parts of his game, but he also had like flaws. But he was like a 5th, 6th best AD carry. And I think that he's like 5th, like he should be on like a 5th, 6th best team. I think that's a reasonable expectation for him this year, and he just didn't get it. Yeah, that 5th, 6th best team, I think, was Mad Lions. That is where I would put him. Also, like, you know, like Spanish or like, isn't that the team they originally wanted him on? He was on the academy team, and then that was the original drama. Is they're like, I would take Flakked over Carzzy. And people were like, you're an idiot, and then he ended up just being better than Carzzy. Like that was the whole fucking drama. That was the spot, man. Like I don't know. It's weird. I think it's always how it is. When you like appropriately rate somebody, it's like people just consider you a hater when they're doing really well. But then when they actually get removed from all of LEC, it turns out that you're the person that
we have
like
to defend them. Exactly. The joke is, the sad thing is, I've had to do this myself with people like Reckless over the years because the people who like the joke is when Reckless is the best, and then I go, I think he's not the best. Then people who hate Reckless go, you're on my side, and I'm like, all right. And then when Reckless is like fourth, they go, he's absolute trash. And I'm like, nah, he's pretty good still. They're like, what the hell, dude? I was like, I was never on your team. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not actually a bona fide. Oh, the joke is for Reckless, definitely I'm a bona fide here. But for the other players, at least, for Adam, I just don't like him as a player. That's it. There you go. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Right, obviously we did like a bumper massive episode to start off with, so we get everyone's takes. Like I said, it's going to be a different format anyway, so we'll do it a little bit differently how we talk about the teams. Like maybe this time, obviously, we'll focus on some of the teams that will be eliminated because we won't talk about them once it gets to the GSL and the playoff section. As we said at the beginning of the episode, we are going to try and do these live, but it's not on a set time at the moment. We're playing it by ear, and basically when the LPL ends on a Wednesday, Dom's just going to take a break, host the stream, and then we'll jump in and do it. And we'll try for a few weeks and just play it by ear, see how it goes. If we like it, we'll stick with it. If not, maybe we'll go to a permanent time. By the way, right now, you can on this same channel, when you're watching the VOD, watch the VOD already for some of the insight where, a bit like I did here of the rankings, we did that also for LCK and LCS with Monty, gives all his thoughts there. Also, if you didn't see it in the off season, I did an episode actually with Dom that was some of the insight like 2 weeks ago, where what we did was we ranked like all the teams that won Worlds. We even addressed the Fnatic issue, but you can get that at the beginning of the episode. We did that. That's on the channel as well. So yeah, we'll be back next week for another episode. Play it by ear with the time. And obviously that one will be less of a ranking. We'll just go into the actual games, what happens and all the jazz. So see you next time.